Welcome to the Agile Career Podcast, where we will take you on the journey from employed for life to employable for life. We'll give you the tips, insights, and strategies to help you build the transferable skills that you'll need. So let's get started. Please welcome your host, Günther Richter.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Agile Career Podcast. So you may be thinking that this is a really odd time to start a new podcast. Obviously there's a lot of podcasts out there, and thinking about things in the global context of what's going on with COVID-19 at the moment. But I'm thinking this is very much a time of uncertainty, and this is exactly what this podcast is about. It's about navigating your career in times of uncertainty and times of change. So before we get started, just a little bit about myself. I started my career back in the 90s, and I was lucky enough to go to university, and near the end of university, the sort of closest bit I had to looking for employment was the guys from Anderson Consulting then coming around to campus and trying to recruit people. And I remember my dad saying, I should be looking at getting a job in the bank. He worked in a large bank, and set myself up for a good and long career. And, that was certainly the way that our parents did things and their parents did things, was that you'd perhaps change jobs once or twice, but you'd stay in a single career. You would grow in that career, you'd be promoted, you'd build up a good pension, which was obviously a benefit. It was predictable and you had a plan, and that was what you did. But I think as things have evolved, careers have turned out to be not just straight lines. I think that employed for life is no longer a thing. Sometimes it's by design, but often it's by default. So these sorts of careers or these career paths are not predictable anymore. And I think, we just need to realize that there is no such thing as a job for life. So that got me thinking about how I'd grown through my career. I'd primarily worked for small companies, but I did have the benefit of consulting to many large corporate organizations. So what was really good was getting that experience from being part of a really small organization, but also getting exposure to how larger corporates functioned and how careers worked in larger corporates. I typically stayed with a small company. I had, in reflection, changed careers more times than I thought. It was a move from a software developer to a business analyst to a management consultant and so on. So I had actually changed careers more time than I thought. And this got me thinking along the lines of how do we then deal with this change, and how do we best support it? How do we prepare ourselves, and how do we build the skill sets that we need to be able to evolve and obviously adapt to this change? So this is very much what this podcast is about. It's about building those skill sets and learnings and strategies that will make us employable for life rather than employed for life. So I think we've just established that there is no such thing as a job for life anymore. Things aren't predictable like they used to be, or to a greater degree as they used to be. And the landscape is changing and continues to change. And if we think about this going back many thousands of years, and thinking at first about the agricultural revolution and how as humans we made the transition from being hunter-gatherers to establishing farms and agriculture and sort of growing and farming food, and what were the skills that we needed to change to that new way of thinking or that new way of life. Obviously, we adapted over a few thousands of years. And of course, the big thing that came was the Industrial Revolution. And of course, this is where machinery started coming into use, and there was a big concern about what would happen to manual labor, what would happen to people's jobs. There were many instances of people destroying factories and destroying machinery to try and preserve their jobs. But I think it was inevitable that this revolution was going to happen. And of course, it changed things in many ways. It led to the rise of the white-collar worker, which I guess ultimately became the information worker. And we ultimately adapted to this revolution. Next came the information revolution, and I guess that's kind of where we are now. Again, jobs have changed in many ways and evolved. So, this leads to thinking, what is next? And we need to start looking ahead and thinking how things are going to change. How are jobs going to change? How will our careers change? And will the jobs that many of us currently do still be available? I'm thinking about things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, and how these pose I don't necessarily want to say a threat to information workers and other workers, but it certainly will change the way that those jobs currently are and the way those jobs are done and the way those jobs are made available. I think even if you think about professionals like lawyers, a lot of work they do is kind of repetitive. It's reading casework. It's trying to draw insights from historical events. And the technology is now emerging to very easily replace these sorts of activities. So, it's not even careers that are non-skilled, for example, that are being replaced. It's highly skilled careers like lawyers and potentially even doctors. So how do we get stability in times like this, and how do we help build our mindset of being employable for life rather than just employed for life? And we need to start thinking about who is responsible for our careers. Is it our teachers or our guidance teachers in school? Is it our parents? Is it our university lecturers, if indeed we go to university? Is it our boss? Is it our organization that we work through or work for? Ultimately, I think it's us who are responsible for our careers. So we need to take ownership of our careers. We need to be able to make sure that we develop the skills that we need to continue growing and to make those transitions. So we need to understand that we shouldn't be hedging all our bets on one thing. So it's very easy, I think, to invest in one career and a set of skills. And if something significantly changes, we could find ourselves without that job, and it would be really difficult to make the transition to something else. So we need to think about the sorts of skills that are transferable, and these are the skills that we can use, that we or have used to move between roles. So think about changing roles in an organization, changing jobs, or even changing careers. And I had read a thing that the average American, for example, changes careers between 5 and 7 times. And I kind of questioned this. And then, as I said earlier at the start of the podcast, went back and thought about my own career, and I, fitted that demographic. I had changed careers probably 4, maybe not as many as 7, but at least 4 times. And it means that you need to build these transferable skills. Again, there's another item that I read that's up to 75% of our skills are transferable between jobs, roles, and careers. And I'm even just thinking about the current crisis we find ourselves in with COVID-19. And we look at a number of airline employees who are now moving to the front line of healthcare. So obviously the airlines, many of them are shut down or reduced service. And we are having flight attendants that are now working in hospitals taking care of the ill. And how have they been able to do that? They haven't been reskilled as healthcare professionals, but they've taken a number of skills that they learned and trained for being part of the airline industry, things like first aid, obviously things like people skills, and they've been able to lift and shift those skills very quickly and use them to take care of sick people. So the question is, how do we build those skills, and how do we know which skills to build and which skills to focus on? So this podcast is very much focused on that. And in this podcast, we're going to be focusing on the tips, insights, and strategies that you can use to build these set of transferable skills and take hold of your career. And through this process, we are going to be bringing you those, and we're also going to be interviewing a number of people so that we can really learn from people that have made these transitions themselves, changed from corporate environments to consulting environments, or moved from government roles to consulting roles, thinking about people that have changed careers and how they've shaped their skills, what's worked for them. We want to learn more from their journeys, and we want to share more or learn more from the challenges that they faced and how they have overcome those challenges. So that was just a really quick intro for episode number 1. I wanted to share that with you, and I really just wanted to get started on this podcast. So I hope you will join me for the next episode. Please, this podcast is going to be available on all of your favorite platforms, whether you use Apple Podcasts, Google, or any other platforms like Stitcher or Spotify. And I really would like to hear from you. So if you want more information, you can find out more about me and the podcast, or you can get hold of me. by visiting www.gunterrichter.com. That's GUNTERRICHTER.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to you joining the next podcast episode.